On to the next letter.
Oh, listen to this fucking guy. And you know what? Just for that, I'm going to read every letter in its entirety, you son of a bitch.
All right, well, I'm going to bed. You can read solo. Good night.
Listen, all I'm going to tell you is Ron misquoted. He said she, and Brian clearly said they.
And that's fine, but when he was talking about what his favorite version was, it was the Linda Ronstadt version. That, to me, was crystal clear during that interview.
And you know what I think is absolutely hysterical in this entire conversation? Is that you're known as Quiet Dave. That's hysterical.
That's true. Hysterical. I do agree with that. That is...
All right, let's move on to number two. So letter number 2, okay, this is another long one, comes from Francesco Greco, and he says, "Hello, my friends. My name is Frankie Greco, a.k.a. Minka Head." I don't even get that nickname, but okay. He said he was born and raised in New York, but he lived in Virginia, Florida, North Carolina, and California. He wants you to know, Dave, that he's a huge Monkees fan, and he's also a big aficionado of Elvis Presley. He just visited a vintage record shop downtown in Roanoke, and he's noticed that all the Van Halen records seem to be reissued again. And he said, why is it that people want to compare Van Halen to Dave's solo work, but they do not do the same thing towards Sammy and his solo career? And then he was going over all the different stats, how Dave had these many platinum albums and these many gold albums. Crazy from the Heat, Even Smiles, Skyscraper is platinum, Little Ain't Enough is gold, and Sammy only has 2 platinum solo albums, which is Standing Hampton and VOA, and 2 gold albums, 3 Lockbox, and I Never Said Goodbye. I mean, is that fair? Correct? And he says this whole damn thing is about Sammy's voice over Dave's, and tell Eddie Flunk he can kiss my ass. Oh my God. Poor Eddie Trunk. And then he also went on, he said, Sammy's voice is higher and it just sounds like squealing, no personality at all. Meanwhile, David Lee Roth has pizzazz, swag, attitude, and reflected all kinds of style of singing. He's phenomenal. I think he could be more praised and applauded. And he also claims that Sammy, like Dave says all the time, was claiming that he was on the same level as in Van Halen in 1984, and he thinks it's crazy. So, Francesco, my friend, number 1, Van Halen was compared to David Lee Roth's solo work because the press pitted them against each other in 1986. Both were at the height of their career, and they were in a public battle under one roof, which was Warner Brothers at the time. So that was sort of like obvious that they were going to be pitted against each other. Number 2, Sam and his manager Ed Loeffler really had a marketing plan when it came to getting him into the band. David Lee Roth was such a huge presence in Van Halen that their plan was to really make him the enemy, and Sam sort of trash-talked Dave and even mocked him in the 5150 album. Also, in concert, he would hold up signs, David Lee Who, and all that shit. Number 3, Sammy likes to talk a big game, and when he was saying he was as big as Van Halen in 1984 is absolutely laughable. He had like 1 novelty hit, I Can't Drive 55. Van Halen had the biggest album of their career with 4 hit singles, sold out multiple nights at arenas all over the place. Van Halen played multiple nights at Madison Square Garden. Sammy couldn't even play Madison Square Garden. Sammy also thinks Van Halen was bigger with him and sold more albums. Well, the truth is Van Halen 1 and 1984 combined sold more than all the Sammy years put together by double. And that's for sure. Sam's career didn't get compared because the press didn't really focus on Van Halen at that time. They were doing Van Halen 3, and it was sort of all over by that point. Sam also had a better vocal range than Dave, for sure, but Dave had the personality, the style, the swagger. Dave is more of a stylistic singer like Vince Neil or Ozzy or Mick Jagger, and Sam is more of a hardcore rock singer like a Chris Cornell, what you could say. So what do you think, Dave?
So I think the comparisons with Dave are because Dave released albums concurrently when Van Halen did.
That's true. Absolutely.
So that's why there's always the Dave albums versus the Van Halen albums comparison. And Sam had started out as a solo artist, and I think that's the difference. Whereas Dave had become a solo artist only after he got kicked out of Van Halen. So that's why I think that's why you get the Van Halen versus David Lee Roth album comparisons.
That's true.
I mean, I do it all the time. The other thing is a lot of the albums came out around the same time.
Yeah.
Many of them came out the same year.
Yep.
And that's why it's easier to compare them. every time we do an album analysis, I always like to sneak in, what the other artist was doing at the time. And really, for me, if you can get the trifecta of comparing a Dave and a Sam and a Van Halen album and have everyone fight about it, and, maybe throw in a Gary Extreme or solo project album, I mean, that's just the bee's knees right there.
Well, I tell you, every album came out the same year except Balance came out in early 1995 when Dave put out Your Filthy Little Mouth in 1994. However, Balance was held. It was late. They took forever to make that album, and they were dragging their feet on that, and they really pushed that to the first quarter of 1995 because of that. But that should have came out in 1994, and they would have been matched up every year otherwise. But anyway, on to letter number 3, and that comes from Shannon the Dude, Dave, and he says that his daughter's into musical theater, so every time he hears Beautiful Girls, he realized it's really structured for a big set-piece musical. You could almost picture Dave, California Girl style, strutting onto the stage and where there's a beach and a beautiful girl sitting waiting by the seaside, and he's trading lyrics with an ensemble. He says, it got me thinking that there's a jukebox musical to be made in the style of Jimmy Buffett's Escape to Margaritaville. And he went and outlined an entire Van Halen jukebox musical, starting with Beautiful Girls, where Dave is a single, fun-loving guy on the beach, and then he goes to Just a Gigolo, where he's being turned down by a beautiful girl, and then he meets Jamie, who he falls in love with. Then they dance the night away for that song, and then he says there's a little comic relief from an older widow with a man with curly blonde hair named Sam. He says could be going to Could There Be Magic, where Dave grabs the guitar from his car and he starts singing in a quiet spot to the girl, and then Feel Your Love Tonight. There's a little romance in Dave's car and a little In a Simple Rhyme, and Dave's dropping Jamie off at home, and then You're No Good, where he gives the female a lead song, and then Dave's out of love again, and they start crying and they're breaking up, and then Jamie's crying, and he goes through Take Your Whiskey Home, and all through Ain't Talk About Love, Jump, Panama, I'll Wait, Pretty Woman, Dancing in the Street, and they end up getting married and ending with Happy Trails. It's hysterical. He says, don't act like the two of you wouldn't be the first in line. I bet there's half a chance you would get Roth to play Dave. Shannon the Dude. So, Shannon, oh my God, dude, you better call Irving Azoff and sell this idea. I think it could work. It would be cheesy and cheeky as hell, but I saw Escape from Margaritaville. In fact, I did an entire huge story on it for my job, which was funny. I interviewed all the cast members and went to the thing, and I think it could work. I really do. So I think you should call Irving. What do you think, Dave?
I think he put a lot of thought into that. It was interesting how he got the songs to flow from one to the other.
Yeah, it was. It was good.
I think you might be on to something. I think your letter was way too long, but I think as a piece of art, I think you're on to something, and you should follow that up. And I don't know, there's got to be some kind of theater group out there crazy enough to take on your idea and try it.
Yeah, you have to do it big and cartoony like the California Girls video for sure.
I think so, yeah. And I think that was the spirit of what he was going for.
I think so. Letter number 4 comes from Florida Marcus Bricks, and he says here, I just heard the new song by Mammoth WVH, Don't Back Down, and I absolutely love the song and the video. It was so cool to peer inside the 5150 studio and see Wolf perform at every aspect of the recording process. The humor was fantastic, and he really captured every personality within the band, including the engineer in a Spinal Tap sort of way. The irritated guitar player, the late drummer fumbling around, dropping the sticks, and the two characters in the booth were dead on. It was great. The song and video were fantastic, and it's so good to finally get some music from an amazing musician, and his dad was so proud. And the question, did you guys hear the little nod to Van Halen's So This Is Love? The last thing we hear is 2 short hits, just like the end of So This Is Love. And whether this was intentional or coincidence reminds us all just where Wolfgang comes from. His dad is with him for sure. Anyway, just a thought. Thought I'd share it with you. So now here's a clip of the ending of So This Is Love. Now here's the clip of the ending of Don't Back Down. I'd have to tell you, it's dead on. What do you think, Dave?
I definitely think it is. Didn't Wolf say it was?
I don't remember him saying that.
I thought he said it somewhere.
Did he?
I thought he did. I thought he said it was a nod to that song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, it's amazing. Florida Marcus, you're definitely drinking your OJ today. You heard that clip, and it was dead on for sure. That's great that you picked up on that. I did not hear Wolf talk about that, but that is a nice nod.
I think so. You know what else Wolf said? He said the Linda Ronstadt version of You're No Good was the best one ever.
You're no good, you're no good.
God, you're never going to stop with this. You know what? I'm starting to think that you and the two Rons have a secret society.
I pay them.
Yeah.
I pay them very well.
I want to tell everybody this, too. I even get letters from Midwest Ron that are headlined, non-publishable in Mailbag, and he reams me. I mean, this guy is thorough.
I pay him by the word.
Oh, I can only imagine. And let me tell you something. The fact that you pay him is a miracle. I've never seen you pay anybody. So
it's obviously money well spent.
Oh, Jesus. Unbelievable. I've never seen you so happy. Happy anniversary. All right, so letter number 5 comes from Mike DiGregorio from Rochester. He says, hi, guys. I wanted to add a couple items that you mentioned. Number 1, you were curious to see what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame would do in honor of Ed. They already did it. The ceremony that eventually aired last past fall, previously postponed, came after Ed's passing, and they included a video with Slash, Kirk Hammett, and Tom Morello talking about Ed. Looks like someone put it up on YouTube, and he sent us a clip. Definitely better than what the Grammys did. Number 2, Lita Ford. Eddie and Lita were not just quote-unquote hanging out. They had a fling, which Lita talked about in her book. She also had talked about it on stage. When I saw her, she told the story and said her song, What Do You Know About Love, is about him. And she said they were both with other people at the time, but it was cool and everybody's happy now. Mike DiGregorio. Wow, Mike. So listen, number 1, yes, you are correct, sir. However, I want to clarify the thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What I meant was the next Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think, was going to be like live, and I thought that they might do some sort of special performance. I do know that they recognized Ed. We talked about it in Van Halen News, but I was wondering if they were going to do some sort of special performance. They weren't able to do that last time because it was all virtual, but that's what I meant. So especially after the Grammys piss poor presentation. And number 2, wow, yes, good for Ed for being with Lita. That's quite a feat there. So what do you think, Dave?
I did not know that there was a thing going on there. I would not have put money on it. So that's interesting.
Yep.
And the second thing is it's Mike DiGiorgio.
DiGiorgio, you're right. It's Mike.
He phonetically gave it to you.
Wow, yeah.
Come on.
I'm going to frenetically give it to you.
I know you would prefer that.
Oh, my God. Things are getting randy. It's been 5 years, folks. It's pretty wild. We're going to move on to letter number 6 because Dave can't get this done fast enough. So letter number 6, Reverend Kurt, 5150 Snyder. He says, great interview with Mitch Beloy. He referenced the mini Wolfgang guitar Ed was getting for Wolfgang when he was there. Peavy made 20 of those, 3/4 to scale Wolfgang guitars, and Ed gave the first one to Wolfie. I have a friend who owns one, and here's a photo of it, and he sent us a photo of it. So I was like, wow, Kurt, a good catch. Thanks for clarifying that. It's a rare find. I'm curious to see what that is worth now that all these guitars are going up for auction. I'm curious. I would imagine that's a rarity, huh, Dave?
Yeah, that's gotta be. That's a cool find.
Absolutely. Letter number 7, we're moving like lightning, from Jason the Dweezil Bay. I don't even know what that means, but hey. Letter number 7. Hey guys, love your podcast. I know old Dave hates long-winded questions. Oh, that nickname's gonna stick. Old Dave. And I don't think he's referring to your age, but your cranky attitude. So listen, he says, hey guys, love your podcast. I'm gonna accentuate this. I know old Dave hates long-winded questions, so I'll get straight to the point. I've always thought it was interesting how the Sammy era began and how it ended. Good Enough starts with, hello, baby! And the last song, if we don't include the 2004 stuff, ended with Feelin'. The way the song fades out feels like the end of an era. It's a very minor key sounding, moody song that sounds like everyone's just sort of fading out. Listen to those two songs back to back and tell me that doesn't sound like the beginning and end of an era. What are your thoughts? Jason the Dweezil Bay. Wow. Well, let me tell you, I agree with you, Jason. I think that's a really good point. Good Enough was very celebratory. 5150 was all upbeat and positive, and Balance was a darker edge record. Feelin' was very much overlooked. I like that song a lot. I think it's very, very intense and edgy, and something Van Halen really didn't do a lot of, but was really cool. Very much like the